Thanks so much, Keir. It's a real pleasure to be here. I love talking about this space, and I love where we're going in the world here. I'm Andrew O'Donnell. Some of you may or may not know me. I've got a strong background with Supercharged stocks, got a good track record following this whole ESG story, following the developments in the mining sector and the energy sector. I really am a strong lobbyist more than a journalist or anything else. My background is, I used to work at Merrill Lynch. So it's always been financial markets. I've been looking at unique opportunities in the market to tell stories. And this has been this culmination over the years of getting the mining sector boom to back together, get it going. And it's for not only for value. I mean, we've got a great value right now. It's also to align our values, because right now we're facing a ton of chaos. I mean, I think we could all agree that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. But just like in the Great Depression, where there was a lot of great uncertainty, there was massive opportunity, and people miss that. The companies that did really well were a mining company, a gold mining company, an energy company, and then technology. And today, I see that being is no different, is that this ESG push that we see, and it's not my term, it doesn't come from me, it's not any great idea for me. If we look at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, the UN, the IMF, the World Economic Forum, BlackRock Capital, who's got $8 trillion, they're all talking about ESG, and they're talking about sustainable energy. They're talking about environmental, dealing with climate change. And if we're talking about that, we're talking about battery energy metals, we're talking about storage, and what a perfect topic to talk about lithium. We all know over here about Tesla, and when we kind of think green and whatnot, we think Tesla, we immediately go to Elon Musk, which once again is lithium, is that we have to keep in mind that the rest of the world also needs a lot of lithium, in particular China. So this is an exciting time. And I know it's a very stressful time for most people, but it's a stock picker's market. It's a time for the little guy to be able to get in and make some money. And this is I haven't been asked to talk about Ion Energy, but I've known this company just before it went public. It's definitely an exciting story. And it fits in exactly with what all of these core groups are asking for us. It's setting our values with making some growth and values towards the future. And I look at it as being this key new way at looking at investing. And I'm just thrilled to be a part of this. And check me out at Supercharged Stocks. Lots of free information there. I like to talk about these types of things. I'm a big voice for this whole space, and let's make some money. Thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing some more, Ali, and take it away.
Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction there. And thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. Ion Energy was co-founded by myself, my chairman, and a few other directors back in 2017. My experience stems from Invesco, having worked in multiple different capacities around the world. I was an advisor to Step Gold, a very recent gold producer in Mongolia. So my experience in Mongolia has spanned a few years here. But I'm excited, as Andrew said, it is sort of an inflection point in ESG and in the way that we consume energy. I'm excited to share our story with you here today. So this is the typical disclaimer. I'd ask you to read it on the website should you choose to. But essentially, let's talk about Mongolia and why Mongolia. Mongolia is a place that most people don't quite know, don't quite understand. As I mentioned earlier, we've been there for over 10 years. My chairman, his first foray there was in a coal company back in 2010. It is a very large country. So for those of you that are Canadian, Ontario is about 1 million square kilometers. Mongolia is 1.5 million square kilometers. Population about 3.3 million people. So just about Toronto proper. But a vastly underexplored country with a vast amount of potential. In fact, there are major, massive mines that operate there today, Oyu Tolgoi being one of them. But Ion was fortunate enough to be granted in 2019, or January 2019, the largest license ever granted to a private company by the government of Mongolia. Mongolia has been historically and currently a consumer of coal, so a very dirty energy source, if you will. We approached the government back in 2016, 2017, looking for lithium in country, and we were awarded, as I said, the largest license in country. So essentially, the ESG angle that Andrew just spoke to, the government's now realizing that, let's move away from those fossil fuels of the past and carry on with a cleaner, greener future. So our project, it's called the Balhaul project. It's an 81,000 hectare license. It's highly prospective lithium brine. It's located about 24 kilometers from the Chinese border at its very tip. There was a fair bit of work done there in the 50s. The Russian government, when Mongolia was part of the USSR, drilled some holes in the Supercharged province, which is where our license is located, along the South Gobi region, and were able to find lithium brine. Lithium brine, well, a saline aquifer, let's call it that, back in the 50s. Nobody quite knew what lithium was back then. They drilled about 20 meters below surface and pulled up the saline aquifer, or saline liquid sample. They were able to tell that it was in fact saline. There were a plethora of minerals in there, and they sort of left it and moved on. In the 90s, the Russian government and the Mongolian government went back down there and drilled a couple of holes. Once again, they were able to find a brine aquifer, about 20 meters below surface. The thickness is yet to be verified. And found lithium just about there as well. So an exciting space for us to look at, but more importantly, in 2016, the University of Science and Technology in Ulaanbaatar sent a gentleman by the name of Dr. Hashbat Dashtatseren, who is a PhD lithium hydrogeologist, down to the Sukbatar region. So he essentially traversed the entire southern region of Mongolia, looking for lithium, either hard rock or brine. His team was able to find significant hard rock on surface, near surface, but more importantly, in our case, they were able to find lithium brine quite shallow, actually about a meter down, up to 811 ppm. The chemistry was quite favorable, and it resides in what's called an endoheric basin. And what that is essentially all precipitation that's fallen in the region since the Cretaceous period has never moved out to an external body of water. Very similar to what you would see in the lithium triangles, so Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. The geology very much mirrors what you would find out there. If you're looking at the map on the screen here, you'll see that our license is not too far from Erlian. Erlian is the major border crossing between Mongolia and China. It is where most goods and services cross the border. China is obviously Mongolia's largest trading partner, and we'll get into that in just a second here. But it suffices to say that the infrastructure in place is quite promising for the development of a lithium brine license. So we talk about the size of the license, and that's fantastic, but you have to look at, as I said, the endoheric basin. So what you're looking at in the black border there, that's the basin that allows for the endoheric basin to exist. All precipitation has percolated through those rocks over, millions of years since the Cretaceous period. And if you look at the two red spots, the Li11 and Li8 there, that's where the original samples were obtained. For those of you that are familiar with the lithium industry, brine is generally a lot cheaper to extract than it would be from hard rock. Clay, if you've been following the Tesla story and Piedmont, that technology is extremely expensive and a few years away. But having brine in an environment such as ours, where you have 250 days of sunshine, very high winds, that sort of aids your evaporation process and eventually your production cycles. A good piece of information about Mongolia. Mongolia has a significant amount of a contribution to its GDP. 25% of its GDP is mining. So we end up having a lot of young folks that sort of go overseas, learn how to mine, come back in country, speak English, hard workers, and are employable in the mining space. So relative to other countries around the world, you might find that Mongolia, you can employ locals to do the work that you require. You require very few expats to advance your projects. That not only keeps your costs low, so you can remain competitive as the global industry starts to change, but it also bodes well with the government, because you're paying taxes, you're employing locals, and you're essentially running what we like to say, a Mongolian company that's trading on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So a bit about us as a management team. Myself, as I mentioned earlier, I've had about 13 years or so, perhaps more in international asset management experience. I started my career at Invesco. I worked in Toronto under multiple capacities, sort of moved on to Hong Kong to work on AIG's real estate business acquisition by Invesco. I was moved back to Toronto to work on Van Camp and Morgan Stanley's acquisition by Invesco. And more recently, I was stationed in London running the Center of Excellence for the investment technology and investment operations team. So you'd ask, where's my mining experience? Fair question. My father has been a miner in Zambia since 1998 in the copper belt. So I have a fair bit of experience in that space. But as we go through the rest of the team, I think you'll realize why we're a compelling story for you to understand. Matthew Wood, chairman of Step Gold, also a founding chairman of Hunu Coal, which is a company that he founded in Mongolia 10 years ago, which spans to our experience. He also founded a company called Avanco Resources in Brazil that was sold to Oz Minerals in 2018 for about 440 million US, Aussie. And I'll cover a bit of that as we go along. Butta, who is the chief executive of Step Gold today, also a special advisor to the Minister of Mines in Mongolia. He was with the previous government. He was reappointed with the existing government. That gives you a sense that we are politically agnostic and can essentially execute irrespective of who's in power in country. Anil Varaj, an investment banker, a fantastic individual on our board, also an EVP for Step Gold. He had a long-spanning career at Dundee, but also the founding principal of Atma Corp and Atma Capital Markets. And Tushin Kishikzuren, our second Mongolian on our board. As I mentioned, we operate as a Mongolian company listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. He's been accredited with having found multi-million ounce gold deposits across Mongolia. So a very fantastic individual to have with a vast amount of experience in country and a team on the ground that allows essentially us to execute. John Mcvicker, he is an ex-EY partner. He joined our team about 3 weeks ago, following us going public. An individual that's been a partner at EY, really good pedigree, understands the industry, and essentially a household name as far as a CFO is concerned. And before I flip to the next slide, I like to do this because it gets people engaged. So you look at this board, you look at the management team, and you ask yourself, where's the lithium experience? Fair question. Our following slide, which is what we worked on over the course of the summer, we added individuals that understand lithium, that have been in the industry for quite a while, that have done things that we're aspiring to do, that have made mistakes that we're ensuring we don't make. And in saying that, we added Paul Fornazzari to our advisory board. He's a partner at Fasken. He's the initial chairman of Lithium Americas, now valued at $1.5 billion. They did a really good deal with Ganfeng, who now acquired a fair chunk of them, but he was also a director of Neo Lithium, which is a very promising project in Argentina that, in my view, is one of the finest in the world. And we'll talk to that in just a second. But having him on the board and having an individual that's been part of the lithium brine industry for quite some time endorse us and come on board and help advise us, I think is a fantastic advantage for the team and the company. Don Haynes, the second individual that we've added here, he is a geologist by trade. He has had a vast amount of experience around the world. He's been highly accredited with having written some of the first 4311s in the lithium brine space, having worked with the OSC to define essentially what a lithium brine company should look like before it goes public. He has been working on our exploration program over the course of the summer, essentially refining it to ensure, as I mentioned earlier, that we do not make the mistakes that others have made over the course of their history. We're a small company, we're a small market cap, we're an early exploration company. It's important that we add individuals that have the skill set to ensure that we have success first time around. So very pleased to have Paul and Don on our team. For those of you that have been following the story and Andrew's intro, ESG, electric vehicles, clean energy, I think are of significant importance and things that cannot be ignored, specifically now that we are in a state where, a fair bit of industry or otherwise have been faced with being furloughed or being laid off as a result of the COVID crisis. And we look at lithium today, and when we founded the company in 2017, we said, those that went public back in 2012, 2013, were very much influenced by the retail sentiment. And as a result, what you've seen in cannabis and crypto over the last 3 years would very much mirror what we saw for lithium and battery metals in 2015 and 2016. So when we founded the company in 2017, we said to ourselves, lithium's coming back, renewable energy is coming back. Why not look at a country of this size to secure lithium, being very close to the largest consumers in the world? And so COVID has actually been a blessing in disguise, in a sense, because it's allowed governments around the world to say, let's take a pause, let's take a break, let's ensure that we're coming out of COVID with sort of a green recovery, as it were. And what they've done, governments around the world, the EU included, they've printed 750 billion euro for a COVID recovery fund. 576 billion euro is nuanced or footnoted with a renewable sentiment. And 20 billion is directly attributed to EV subsidization and gigafactory development. So that prompted companies like Mercedes, a massive German vehicle manufacturer, as we all know, to go out and invest in a company like Ferasis, which is a battery metals technology company in China, who then invested in an offtake agreement from a producer of lithium in Australia. So this vertical integration that we're seeing in the battery metal space is unlike anything we've seen in the resource sector over the course of our history, to be quite frank. And that's allowed a lot of companies to not only reinvest in technology, but ensure that we've allowed ourselves to reduce the cost. So a little known company by the Western Hemisphere called CATL, Chinese American Technology Limited, they are the largest battery manufacturer on the planet today. They've refined and renewed essentially an older technology called the lithium ferrophosphate battery. That has now reduced, or rather increased the range of a battery before it requires replacement from 100,000 miles to 1,000,000 miles. It's also reduced the cost by 40%. They then signed an exclusive agreement with Tesla to provide all Model 3 production batteries in China. So we have a shift not only from government, but also from technology that will essentially allow us to have a Tesla Model 3 equivalent to be as affordable as a Toyota Corolla in the market today. So this massive wave and this massive demand that's about to follow proves that ION Energy is not only closest to the largest market in the world, but in a position that allows us to service it. We talk about Mongolia, and I'll go back to sort of the EV trends in the world shortly here, but Mongolia is a country, as I said, that most people don't quite understand. They've always assumed it's part of China or don't recognize that it's a sovereign state. We've been in Mongolia for over a decade. My chairman forayed into the country in about 2010. He started a company called Hunu Coal during the last coal boom. He acquired multiple coal-bearing assets at the time. He did an IPO on the ASX for 20 million in 2010. In 2011, he sold to Banpu of Thailand in an all-cash deal for $500 million. So leveraging sort of that coal boom at the time. Today, one might argue that we're facing a similar boom in the lithium space. In 2018, I was an advisor at Step Gold, and a lot of the management team and directors, as you'd see, are part and parcel of the same team. But that was the only gold IPO on the TSX main board. So massive, massive win for the team in a jurisdiction that most people don't understand. COVID was a difficult time, but Step was able to come to production in April of this year. So they produced first gold in April of this year, declared commercial production this year as well. But we're also endorsed with Eric Sprott's investment of $15 million this year as well. So massive wins for us as a group, massive wins for the country. And with ION Energy, we plan to replicate that success. So geography, we talked about it, and we say, we're closest to the largest market in the world, that being China, and I'll talk to the specifics in just a minute here. And I also mentioned earlier that we operate as a Mongolian company listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange, or the TSX Venture. That allows us to keep our costs low. We don't have expats running amok and essentially running up our costs. You look at the infrastructure in the region, despite the camels on the image in my screen here, relatively good roads until you approach about 60 kilometers from our license. And then again, you have nice flat dirt roads. I like to argue that they're better than most roads here in Toronto. So fantastic way to produce. If you look at the lithium triangle, the jagged rocks and the crystals that exist on those salars are extremely taxing on vehicles. You need specialized tires. The other sort of joke that I like to make is that you change your tires as often as you change your socks. So again, keeping our costs low. Looking at our location based on our largest market, very close to market. There's a lot of gigafactories, et cetera, being planned in China. But it's important to note that China is, our closest neighbor. But you have Taiwan, you have Korea, and you have Japan. They're all battery manufacturers. The Indian government is now trying to catch up to China given the geopolitical issues that exist. So having all these individuals, as I like to say, within earshot allows us to have a larger market within access relative to our individuals that produce in LATAM. And this slide, I think, is rather important. And while China is of significance, as I mentioned, Japan, Korea, and Taiwan are also significant. But folks think about how many Teslas you see on the road in Canada today or the US today, and you see that number growing, and it's a fantastic number. But you look at EV production and EV sales around the world. The little-known company that I mentioned earlier, CATL, that signed that deal with Tesla, is valued at 70 billion US. So a massive player. And they produce a lot of batteries for most consumers around the world. But you look at countries like Norway or Iceland, they're acquiring a fair number of electric vehicles because they tend to be greener, and Canada is very similar in that regard. But China is buying 3 times as many EVs per capita on an annual basis than anywhere else in the world. In fact, 2 of the companies that produce EVs in China produce more EVs than all other EV producers combined. So a fantastic little fact for you to have, but you know Tesla, but you've heard of Nikola, you've heard of Lucid. New players are coming onto the market on a daily basis. Volkswagen has now said that as of 2025, their entire fleet of 300 models will be electric vehicles. GM just announced they're doing $1.5 billion investment in Michigan to build EVs. You look at Mercedes, they've released the ESG, they've released a whole bunch of different models. Audi with their e-tron. Everybody's moving away from the ICE and from oil and gas over to electric vehicles. I think you'll find that oil and gas has sort of been put to the side, and where we are in the history of humanity is electric vehicles, lithium, nickel, and copper are now being deemed strategic metals by governments around the world, where they're saying, we would have fought wars over oil, now we'll do it over lithium. The US just invested in a nickel mine over in Ireland. Mike Pompeo was over in the US in Mongolia last year, looking for battery metals. Narendra Modi was also in Mongolia looking for battery metals. So it's a paradigm shift and an inflection point when you have Tesla valued at more than ExxonMobil today. So Mongolia, we spoke about it, and I think it's important to know from a government perspective, the government was recently re-elected for 4 more years as of June this year. They've been extremely supportive. I've been to Mongolia 7 times myself. I've met with the Minister of Mines. I've been in investor forums with the President of Mongolia and the Prime Minister of Mongolia, both of which are in 2 different political parties. But the important takeaway from all of that is, irrespective of the political party, we've always heard the same story, which is we've learned from our mistakes. For those of you that know the old days with the potential for nationalization and Ivanhoe and everything else, we've learned from our mistakes. We will encourage foreign investment. We will ensure that you are protected. Canada now has a Foreign Investment Protection Act with Mongolia, so your assets are protected. And we've seen over the course of our tenure in Mongolia that we've been able to bring a mine into production, Step Gold. COVID, the world was locked down, yet April of this year, Step Gold was pouring gold. We're about to commence our exploration program, hopefully in short order here. In fact, I can mention it now because I've just seen the news come across the wire. We are commencing our exploration program in Mongolia. We have a seasoned team in country that will allow us to execute. We're being advised by Don, who I've introduced earlier. And it's a country that's fantastic for doing business in, and we're very excited about the space. So what have we done as a company, and how far along have we come? What's our valuation? I think that's important to note. We were granted the license, as I mentioned, by the Mongolian government, the largest ever land package ever granted to a private company in January of 2019. In August, we completed our qualifying transaction with a commonly controlled CPC. We commenced trading on the last day of August this year. And we've had some coverage from Calor Capital over in Vancouver, if you're familiar with that firm. They valued us at $37 million post-money. Today, our valuation is $15 million. We're commencing exploration, as I mentioned. It's over the wire. If you'd like the details, I'd encourage you to check our website, but also the wire. And we are fully funded for exploration on our existing license, which at 81,000 hectares is a significant license to explore, yet we're doing it the right way the first time around. Our value proposition, proximity to market, we've executed in country, we do what we say, and we're looking to acquire more lithium-bearing licenses in country, which I believe you will tend to see as we progress our story. So with that, Andrew, I'll pass it to you, and I'm open to questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ali. And actually, we've got a couple quick questions. What is the current share float? And then following that up and closely aligned is, what percentage of the company do management and insiders own?
Great question. The float today is, don't quote me on this, but between 24 and 29%. And that's on the back of us having locked up. And that's a perfect segue to the second question that you've asked, is we as management and insiders own about 36% of the company. We are fully escrowed for 2 years, so we don't have a single trading share until then. We've had a phased sort of release period over the course of the next 3 years for everybody else that came in at earlier rounds. And that's, as a result, made the float quite small at this time, but we expect it to grow as the months go on.
I know for myself, one of the questions I always ask is, and funny enough, because you're able to answer it live, was what's the news flow going to be? What's the urgency? Why should we care right now, other than the big macro theme that I think most people kind of see once you kind of highlight it? But you touched on it. I mean, you've got your license, you're going, you're drilling. So what other news? Will that be like a kind of an onslaught of more and more news coming out in the near term?
I believe so, Andrew. I think, when you look at what we're doing today, which is geophysics and seismic, that allows us to get a sense of how deep the aquifer is, sort of how thick it is, how wide it is, how long it runs, get a true sense of the underlying geology. And that in itself will tell us, that you might have X volume in an aquifer, potentially. And then ultimately we'll move on to drilling, which is an auger, truck-mounted auger rig drilling. We'll obviously line the casing and ensure that there's no contamination, bring up that brine to surface, and then have it sampled by a third-party independent lab. But when you have a sense of here's how big your aquifer or your salar or your brine body is, and you're able to obtain samples that show you a certain percentage or ppm, then you can extrapolate as to what your early resource may be. But as we went public, and for those of you that know the story and for those of you that are new, we are aggressive. So our intention here, given our in-country track record, is to ensure that we're positioning ourselves in a way that we're able to build on to our hectarage. So call it additional license acquisition or what have you. But our intent is to acquire as many licenses in country because of our relationships, but also our ability to execute. And the government's been extremely supportive of that. So I would expect that you would see a fair bit of news flow regarding our current exploration program on Babayul, which is our 81,000 hectare license. But you may see as well potentially some room for acquisition in the near future.
Good. Well, this is a good lead-in because we've got another question that popped up, and it was asking, do you have a lithium resource yet to kind of build upon, or is there any data in the past? And also, are you able to give a bit more specifics about the planned exploration program?
Yeah, absolutely. So we cannot give you a resource. It is very early stage. It's a massive license. It's an endoheric basin, which very much mirrors what you find in the Lithium Triangle. And you'd find the Lithium Triangle that a number of companies may share this one basin, as I said. So in our case, we're going off the back of the work that was done in the 50s that indicated that aquifer solution or that saline solution as an aquifer beneath surface. We're going off the back of the work that was done in the 90s that showed that there was lithium in place. We're going off the work in 2016, more importantly, by the PhD hydrogeologist Hashbat Dashtetseren, who found lithium not too far from surface. So we cannot have a resource until we've had an extensive exploration program. Don Haynes, who I mentioned earlier, that we engaged over the course of the summer to join our team, has been instructing our team to ensure that we are able to provide some sort of early indication as to a very early resource in Q1, maybe Q2 of next year. So we'll get there. Looking at the geology and having the individuals like Don sort of endorse what we're doing tells us that our geology very much mirrors what we would find in the Lithium Triangle. And the second question, Andrew, if you mind repeating it.
Well, you actually got both of them because they just asked for more details about the exploration program, yeah, but also the resource one. But we did have another one here too that popped in, and it's as well as compared to U.S. projects or some of the large South American projects. What's the scale or the size of this project, and what like the permitting as far as the process and any issues, especially if you're looking at other packages as well?
Yeah, fair enough. I think from a size perspective, we are significant, and if you'd like to visit our website, you'd see a fact sheet that illustrates what sort of our hectarage is relative to our peers that we've identified as comps. But from a permitting perspective, as you mentioned, and actually getting permissions, if you were to read our press release that went out today, I mentioned an individual of significant importance on our board, and that's Bata Tumburoche. He is essentially our local stakeholder, but an individual with a vast amount of experience in country and relationships that span, decades, including his families or what have you. But it's more so for us, we put the Mongolian government on the spotlight. And we said, in 2018, we're going to list a gold company. There hasn't been a listing in Mongolia for quite a while. And we're going to say, we'd like to present Mongolia to the world. And we did so with Step Gold. We recently mirrored that with ION. And as a result, the government relationships are quite strong because they've seen that we execute on our promises. But beyond that, as I mentioned earlier, we employ local Mongolian people. So with some of the other companies in Step, when I was an advisor to that company and the team there went out and actually employed locals from the local municipality to help work on the mine. They employed, or rather utilized co-ops from that local region to provide dairy, to provide meat, to provide vegetables. So when you employ the locals and you show that goodwill, and you build schools, you build sanitation, you do all of that good stuff, they're almost inclined to work with you. And as a result, we have had no challenges with permitting or the like for ION as well.
I love that because when you get kind of stakeholder engagement, even at the community level, it just makes life go a lot smoother. You're helping that region grow and develop, which is what everyone likes to see as well. This is a question I get asked all the time as well, as the stock isn't very liquid. So do you see this changing very soon?
We do. I mean, what I like to say is we're a news story. We've just been trading for shy of 2 months here. We're a story that through these webinars and the like, we're telling our story. We're ensuring that folks understand sort of where we are. If you look at the depth, for those of you that are traders, there's a fair bit out there that you could acquire. But we are a news story. We are telling our story. We were trending quite well until Elon Musk, and I feel like I should stop using this example, but when the Piedmont deal was announced during Battery Day, Elon mentioned he's going to get all his lithium from the clays in Nevada. And, lithium prices or lithium equities around the world tanked about 30-40%. And the analysts shortly thereafter were quick to call Elon on sort of how realistic is this program, right? And so we didn't fare as badly, if you will, because we are a news story. But also we went public, we added to our team, and that's something we always said we'd do. Now that we've announced exploration, we're spending money on the ground. We expect more eyeballs on the story, and through avenues like this, ultimately we hope to grow that volume.
And then we have another one as well, and it's just asking, are you fully funded for 6 months, for 12 months? The concern that, we don't want to see a cheap PP sneak in here. And that kind of ties into too, liquid, if we get the story out, people are aware of what's going on. That's a big motivator, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, fantastic question. I think when we went public, the minimum requirement for the TSX for us to raise was $1.3 million. That would have kept us funded for our existing Bavaiul license for our exploration program. We raised $2.7 million. So we more than doubled our minimum requirement from the TSX. So we're very well funded to complete exploration on our existing license. As I mentioned earlier, we might look to acquire additional licenses in the future, but that's up for debate, and let's see how we go on. But it suffices to say we're fully funded for exploration on Bavaiul, our 81,000 hectare license.
Excellent. Well, I think we've answered them all. And these are all good critical questions because, I think people can see this big move and shift. And it's just, I look at the story too, it's like a lot of things is people just don't know where to look. They see that these things are happening, and the general thought is, just go look at Tesla, especially younger people. They just use that as the proxy for everything ESG. And I kind of remind people that no, there's so many amazing stories with great management teams that are fully funded that, you don't need to go buy Tesla. You could get stocks at 30 cents, 20 cents, 40 cents, and really spur on this growth and see significant gain. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few months here as well.
Thank you.
And we'll wait for another just minute or two, just in case we have anything else. And then Kier, can you jump in and conclude? But I think we've covered all of the questions. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, myself, for inviting me here and having me here. And it's wonderful to hear the story again, Ollie. Very exciting. And thanks so much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Andrew.
great. Thank you very much, Ali, for giving everybody a rundown on the story. I thought you did a great job on sort of explaining how the company is positioned, what's in front of it, and then just a little bit about why I thought it's one that people should hear is it's from a team that obviously knows Mongolia extremely well, and they've delivered multiple times massive wins for shareholders, including just recently Step Gold on the full TSX big board, which has become a new gold producer just this year. They're able to do it. Go from a development story to a producer in 14 months, probably the fastest I've ever seen a mine put into production on the planet. So a great team, very interesting project, huge in scale, first one that's ever been awarded in country, and obviously we're seeing the electrification of the world. So lithium is not going away. Anyways, thanks very much. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.